So today, the plan is to wrap up virtue theory. Hope you had time to read it out. Okay, so virtue theory, let me remind you, is a theory of eudaimonia, of happiness, of well-being. It's a teleological theory because it defines good life in terms of happiness, in terms of well-being. So, as it turns out, the definition of good life or virtue uh, is related to happiness, is related to well-being, according to this theory, right? And that's why this theory is a theory that focuses on the nature of the person or the nature of the personalities or the nature of the character, because to know what virtue is, we need really to understand the nature of the persons involved, the kind of traits and characteristics they have. And I think I finished last time the class by making this distinction between two kinds, if you remember, guys, two kinds of goods, instrumental good and a final good. And final good is that thing which is sought for its own sake, because there's nothing else beyond it to seek. And as it turns out, the final good for human beings actually is one thing. There's just one final good. And that final good is happiness. Happiness is the final good for the final good that human beings seek for its own sake, because there's nothing else beyond it, right? And clearly, guys, now you can see the link between the definition of good life and the idea I mentioned about considering the nature of the persons. Because once we analyze or once we sort of understand the nature of human beings, we realize that the human beings are such that they are concerned with the final good, with happiness, with well-being. And so human beings are beings who are driven for the sake of happiness, then clearly there's a link between happiness and good life, between happiness and virtue. Virtue is not something alien from happiness. They're kind of connected to each other. But let me see if you have questions, guys. The issue now is, well, what is happiness, right? What does happiness mean, right? According to Aristotle, guys, happiness is meant to be a state that is unique or peculiar to human beings, right? Or happiness is meant to be a state that would be kind of unique or to the kind of beings that human persons are like, right? So when we speak about the nature of happiness, we kind of we would be addressing a state that is peculiar to human beings, right? Yes, definitely, Jana. But happiness, let me tell you what happiness is not according to Aristotle. Happiness, if you can see the PowerPoint, happiness is not just simply to have life of nutrition and growth. To have life of nutrition and growth is not is not happiness. Why? Because life of nutrition and growth is not unique to human beings. It's common to every species. Nutrition and life of nutrition and growth is a defining feature of life to all species, right? But we're looking for something that is unique to human beings. Happiness is also not having sensations, because sensations are also not unique to human beings. Animals have sensations. Maybe insects have sensations. Also, happiness, guys, is not life of pleasure, because pleasure is transient, is temporary. Pleasures come and go. And happiness is meant to be a constant state in a human beings. To be happy means to be in a constant state. Happiness is also not life of glory or honor. Okay? To be happy is not equivalent to life of honor. Why? Because honor, life of honor, depends on an act in which an individual is bestowed honor by somebody else, right? Like a state or a body or an institution. Like, like for example, if you're honored by winning a prize, like a, I don't know, science prize, the winning of the prize depends on those who bestow or give the prize to you. But happiness, guys, is meant to be a um, self-made state. Happiness is meant to come from within, right? So for all these reasons, happiness is not to have life, is not to have a life of nutrition and growth, is not to have life of sensation, not life of pleasure, and not life of honor. What we get from that now is that happiness is first meant to be a state that is unique to human beings. Happiness is meant to be a constant state, a constant disposition in mankind and humanity. And finally, happiness is meant to be something that comes from within, not as something that is given. So to be happy, guys, is not waking up in the morning and feeling good for 5 seconds or 5 minutes, and then becoming becoming in a bad mood afterward, or turning to a bad mood afterwards. To be happy means to feel good about yourself constantly, right? So I wrote stayed there. Oops. Yeah, to be happy is to feel good about yourself constantly. So now the question is, what is happiness, guys? What do you think happiness is? Oops. Happiness, if you remember also last time, I said that in order to understand virtue and happiness, we need to look for the true reward. We need to look for the true function of human beings, the true nature of human beings. And now we can see that the true nature of human beings, the true function, guys, the true function of a human beings is not sensation or nutrition and growth, because this is not unique to human beings. The true function of a human being, the true function of a human being lies in reason. Only human beings of all species possess the faculty of rationality, the faculty of reasoning, the faculty to be able to think, reflect, meditate, the faculty of being conscious, of being aware, reflective, right? Only human beings have such faculties. Plants don't have it. Animals presumably don't have it, right? Only human beings have this faculty of rationality. So happiness then, Rinad, is somewhat connected to this faculty of rationality. So what is happiness according to Aristotle? To be happy is to, let me read with you, is to actualize one's life and to excel in one's true function. That is, engage in activity in accordance with reason, by which you actualize your true reality, your true function, your true rationality in the most excellent way. Let me repeat: to be happy is to engage in activity. Of course, it requires activity. To engage in activity in which you fulfill your unique part, your true part, rationality, in the most excellent way. So happiness is a life of self-fulfillment, self-realization, self-actualization of the true part on you and the noble part in you, rationality. Yes, yes, it's related to virtue. Because, guys, reason constitutes our true nature and function. So then happiness consists in a state, active state, in which our true nature is fulfilled, actualized, right? Let me explain this part a bit. According to Aristotle, guys, every part in our body and every part in our bio in our body has a function, right? So let me ask you, what is the function of our eyes? Function of our eyes is to see, sight. What is the function of our nose? To smell. Every part of our biology has a function. This is Aristotle, the biologist here. Now, if every part of us has a function, then equally, we as a whole being have a function. And our true function lies in that part which is unique to us, rationality. Our true function lies in actualizing our rationality. Okay, you might ask me, but isn't it the case, guys, that happiness is subjective, that it varies from one individual to another? I think somebody raised this issue last time. I can't remember who. Okay, Anhal's desires are different than Hussein's. Hussein's desires are different than Natasha's. Natasha's desires are different than Rebecca, because yes, you have different experiences, different desires in life, right? Right. So some of you maybe desire to be musicians. Others desire to be filmmakers. Others desire to be medical scientists. Others desire to be engineers. Others desire to make business, right? So we have different desires. Still, although we have different desires, yet there's a common formula to happiness. There's a universal formula that applies to us all. Natasha, Rinad, Hussein, Anhal, Rebecca. And what is this universal formula? The universal formula is to be active in our life, in which we fulfill our potential, our true function, our true rationality in whatever we do, whether we are business, men or women, filmmakers or musicians, our true happiness lies in fulfilling our true, unique part in us in whatever we do. Anhal, shoot. Anhal?
Yes,
Anhal?
Doc.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Basically, speaking of happiness, and it's somehow subjective from one person to another. You know, Ted Bundy, he's an American serial killer.
Yeah.
Basically, in
Yeah.
an interview before he's being executed, he was so happy that he killed a lot of people. So, you know, he might be happy. So I think that's
Hey,
a bit
but is this true
messed up.
happiness? Okay, I know, but is this true happiness? Aristotle would say not, because the true happiness, sorry, I'm answering you quickly, lies in actualizing our life in that which is, in regards to that which is unique to us, rationality. So being a serial killer, although it gives you feelings of maybe weird, although it might have given Ted Bundy, whatever his name was, might have given him some weird states of ecstasy or what have you. But then it's not true happiness, is it? Right?
I don't know. No.
Yeah.
How can you know
So,
if it's true happiness or not?
well, because here where we bring in biology and psychology, all of us human beings have a common biology and psychology, right?
Yes.
Right? And how all of us have this faculty of rationality. So this faculty of rationality is that part which is unique to us. So then to be truly happy is to actualize this part, to realize it in action, in activity, whatever this active is, whatever this activity is. But being a serial killer is not the kind of activity in which such rationality is fulfilled, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Because it kind of it's contrary to what to rationality. But being a musician, or being a business man or woman, or being a filmmaker would be ways by which our unique part is fulfilled. I don't know if I answered you there, Anhal.
Yes, yes, clearly,
Yeah,
Doctor.
yeah.
Thank you.
That's a good question, Patricia. No, of course it doesn't, but it doesn't eliminate sadness, disappointment. But I guess a truly happy person, Patricia, would not let states, okay, a truly happy person would be a person who would be capable of um, facing disappointments or frustrations in life without losing his sense or her sense of happiness. Yeah. How? Through learning, through practice. I don't know if I answered you, Patricia. Yes, well, it is optimistic, but then, Renat, if you truly believe in the possibility of happiness in life, if one truly believes in the possibility of happiness in life, one has to be optimistic, right? Unless, of course, you question that, right? Believing in happiness is optimism, obviously. Exactly. There you go, Jean-Marc. Nailed it. By definition, to believe in happiness is to be optimistic in some sense. Yes, Hadi, absolutely. Hadi are like making this point. Tab, what's the relation, guys, now between virtue, between good life and happiness? Because you might, okay, so what's the connection between happiness and virtue? Let me give you an example. Okay, my example, but inspired by Aristotle. Uh, Take a guitar player, guys, right? Right, guitarist. Maybe some of you play guitar, right? Okay, I play guitar horribly. So, okay, who plays guitar? Let me ask you, what is the true, okay, thank you, Jana. What is the true function of a guitarist? What is your true function as a guitar player? What would be your true function? To play the guitar, absolutely. To play guitar, play music. But does anyone who play the guitar, Jana, does anyone who play the guitar, does anyone who play the guitar play it well or excellently? Is every guitarist an excellent guitarist? Of course not. I mean, I can tell you about me. I'm horrible. You don't want to listen to the way right? So I'm a bad guitar player, right? But Jana maybe is a good guitarist, yeah? So who deserves the title an excellent guitarist or an excellent guitar player? Those who play the guitar excellently. Jana, yeah. Those who play the guitar excellently would deserve to be called excellent guitarist, right? The same logic applies to happiness. Every one of us has the function of rationality. But that doesn't mean that every one of us fulfills this function of living life or being active in life in accordance with reason. Who deserves the title good person or virtuous? Who deserves the title a good person or virtuous person? Who would be called truly a virtuous person? Shunihar, who is a truly virtuous person? Is a person who fulfills his life, who engages in activity in life in accordance with reason, in the most excellent way. Let me repeat, only persons who engage in activity in accordance with reason, in the most excellent way, are called virtuous persons. So good persons are those who engage in activity in their life, in which they fulfill their rationality in the most excellent manner. Only those guys would be called virtuous persons. As I wrote down there, this is a theory that is optimistic about human potential. But you can see now the link between, guys, virtue and happiness. What's the link? Virtues, guys, are the sort of qualities that are conducive to happiness. To be happy is to be virtuous, to be a good person. And to be a good person, Nihal, to be virtuous is to be happy. Happiness and virtue are not alien to each other, but they are identical states in human beings. To be happy is to be virtuous, and to be virtuous is to be happy. Yeah? Which means what? Which means that if you remember last time, I asked you, how do we tell the difference between vice and virtue? Let me go back to give you examples of, sorry, hang on. I lost the mouse. Here. Vices, guys, are the sort of qualities that don't lead to happiness in the way Aristotle defines happiness. Only virtues are the sort of things that lead to happiness. So to go back to the Ted Bundy example, Ted Bundy was vicious, merciless, killer, serial killer, aggressive. He was vicious. And such vicious qualities don't lead to the happiness the way Aristotle defined happiness. So how do we tell whether something is a virtue or a vice? Virtues, guys, are the sort of things that are conducive to happiness. Happiness in which human beings fulfill themselves in accordance with reason. Did you guys get the point? Did you guys get the point? So there you go. Virtues are those characteristics that are conducive to happiness. Virtues, good life, and happiness are related concepts. Now, Aristotle, guys, to explain further the connection between happiness and virtue, introduced what he called the virtue table, or the golden mean equation. To illustrate the connection between virtues and happiness. Okay, so what is the golden mean equation? According to I'm just gonna, you all see, guys, the table in front of you? Yeah. Okay. According to Aristotle, for every action, guys, for every emotion we have, there are three ways. There are three possible ways by which we can deal with the emotion. Two of those possible ways are necessarily vices. Only one is a virtue. And you guys have here the three columns, guys, are the ways by which we can deal with any emotion, right? The pink, is that pink or rose pink? Pink, pink, green, and blue. Pink and blue, the columns in pink and blue are vices. The column in green is virtue. Okay, so in relation to any emotion, let me repeat, there are three possible ways by which we can deal with the emotion. Two of those ways are necessarily vices, the pink and the blue. Vices are always, guys, vices always lie in the extreme. Acting extremely, guys, is always bad, is always a vice. An extreme is of two kinds, or there are two, I should say, there are two kinds of extreme actions or extreme behavior. On the one hand, there's excess. On the other hand, there is deficiency. Okay, maybe there's no point writing, it's in front of you. What's the difference between excessive behavior and deficient behavior? Excessive behavior or excessive action is when you behave. Yes. Is it lagging? Can you guys hear me? Am I heard? Okay, maybe Jana, it's your connection. So excessive action is when you perform an action with too much display. Deficient behavior or deficient action is when you perform an action with too little display. And both are vices. Performing an action with too much is as bad as performing an action with too little display. The virtuous thing is always to act in the mean, in the middle. And what does it mean to act in the middle? Means neither to act excessively nor deficiently, but to act appropriately, within measure, within control. Okay, take it. Within control, within measure, within measure, within limits. Yeah. Yes, Natasha, absolutely. Let me give you an example. Best thing is example. Fear, the feeling of fear. Fear, guys, is natural. It's state. Maybe it's present in some individuals more than others. But in the end, yes, to stay in character, absolutely, is one another way of putting it. But fear is a natural state, right? So when a person feels fear, there are three ways by which the person can deal with fear. Two of those ways are vices. Only one is a virtue. So let me give you an example and ask you. Guys, suppose you're a soldier and your troops come under attack from the enemy. Naturally, you feel apprehensive, you feel fear. Now, if you feel fear and yeah, in reaction to fear, you kind of run away. That's a vice or a virtue? You run. It's about why. What is it? Extreme or deficiency? Excess or deficiency? Because you would have shown too little willingness. This is what I meant earlier by display. Too little willingness to deal with the fear. You just ran from it. You didn't face it. You showed too little willingness or too little display to deal with the emotion. But what if you, instead of running away, you jump from the you jump from the trenches and start shooting at the enemy without thinking? Is that vice or virtue? It's excess. It's vice, because you would have shown too much display in dealing with the fear. And too much is as bad as too little, because in both cases you're kind of ignoring it. You're not dealing with it properly. What would be the virtuous thing to do? Virtuous thing to do is neither obviously to be deficient nor excessive, but to face it, to deal with it, in a measured way. Measure, control, limitation, to stay within character. I like this expression, right? And that would be courage. True courage is to face the fear within control, within measure. But to run away is to display cowardly behavior. And to jump in to face fear without thinking is also a vice. It's rashness. It's the vice of rashness. Did you guys get the point? Now, just one to act in the mean is connected to happiness, because acting in the mean, in the middle, is connected to reason, right? Because by definition, to act in the middle, Rita, is defined by reason. So there you go, guys. Virtues are actually the sort of things that are defined by reason. And because they are defined by reason, they are the sort of things that lead to happiness. Happiness as self-fulfillment, self-actualization of the rational part of us. So that would explain to you this connection between happiness and virtue. Now, guys, let me just maybe add one point. We as a human beings, at a given moment, don't just have one quality to think about. We have endless number of qualities, or endless number of things to consider, right? So the virtuous thing to do would be, at a given moment, is to make a rational decision on what would be the best what would be the best course of action in the situation. The best course of situation that is in the middle, that is not excessive, that is not deficient, and the best course of action that is conducive to our happiness. And that's why, guys, morality, according to Aristotle, requires deliberation and thinking in context, in situation. There's no magical formula here. There's no magical equation. We have to make decisions in context, in situations, right? Did you guys get my point? Do you have another example you might want to ask about? I mean, maybe you can check the other examples on your own, like temperance, pride, truthfulness. Some of these examples are kind of funny, right? I usually always like to do the anger example, right? The virtuous thing in dealing with anger is showing good temper, to kind of control one's anger in a measured way, right? In a controlled manner, in a manner that sets limits to one's actions and behavior. Yeah. Now, I want to ask you guys: Are we born virtuous and happy? Are such states that we are born with? Are they innate? And of course, the answer is no. Exactly, no. Neither happiness nor virtue are innate states. Rather, they are made states. They are states that we have to cultivate. Yes, by our own experiences, by our own actions. And of course, this is where society would be helpful, right? So virtue and happiness are the kind of things that are cultivated in the individual. with the help of society, if any. Renard, but not Aristotle. To Aristotle, happiness is not innate. It's not, and obviously there was no yet fear of genetics. Yeah, we're talking about virtue theory, Renard. Right? Absolutely. Tab, how do we acquire? How do we do it? How do we learn? Because how do we learn to be happy and virtuous? Because it requires learning. Yeah, but how do we learn from experience? Do we learn to be virtuous and happy by simply reading books? Of course not. That doesn't work that way. So how do we learn by experience? But how does experience work? How do we learn from experience? Practice. By practice. And how do we practice? How do we learn by practice? Guys, magic. You should know that. How do we learn by practice? By there's a word starting with R. Let's play again. Finish the word. Next letter E. Repetition. We repeat. Yeah. Okay, let me give you an analogy. Let me tell you how I learned to what do you call it, to ride a bicycle. I know. Okay, I can say this. I know how to ride a bicycle. Don't laugh at me. How did I know that? How did I learn it? By practice, by repetition. And I tried the first time. Maybe I fell. Second time, third time, but eventually I got the hang of it, right? Same, guys, same for car driving, right? You learn car driving by practice. And morality, moral reasoning is like that, or virtues and happiness are like, you learn them in practice. You repeat acts. And by repeating certain acts, you would eventually learn to become courageous, just, in control of anger, right? And then happy. Because remember, virtues lead to happiness. So by repetition, you would learn to be happy and virtuous. Yeah, and this is amazing theory because to Aristotle, virtues are the sort of things that can be cultivated, can be made through practice, through training, right? This adds up to the optimism of Aristotle, guys, if you can get this point. Yeah. Yes, Anhar, go ahead.
Doctor, you were saying that virtue leads to happiness. However, a survey was conducted in Sweden. You know, Sweden and all Nordic
Yeah.
countries or Scandinavian countries, they have like the ultimate level of virtue and the ultimate level of such traits and such, you know, and justice,
Yeah.
equity, etc. However, people are not happy there. A lot of people commit suicide. A lot of people
Right.
live in depression. I don't know
Well,
why.
that's a good point. But I guess if Aristotle would travel in time, then he would advise perhaps I guess the Swedish government or whatever to make changes in institutions. Or okay, sorry, I'm speaking on behalf of Aristotle, in such a way that individuals will be encouraged further to fulfill their potential, their being, right?
Yeah.
So I guess Aristotle would say people maybe are not happy or committing this and that because they're not really finding purpose and meaning in their lives, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm not saying that Aristotle, be careful, is correct, but I'm saying I'm trying to, I guess, argue his position or what he would say about this
Yes.
situation, right? Yeah, but that's a good point. Uh, 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 any questions? Do you all see why happiness is not innate? Because it's an activity in accordance with rationality, an activity in which human beings fulfill their potential as a human beings with reason. But let me see if you have questions. Here I wrote, virtues are not innate, but the result of practice, habituation, training. Okay, so just maybe add this point about habits. Okay, this might actually surprise you. Aristotle thought that ideally, as a result of practice and training and repetition, virtues would become habits in a human mind, in the human soul, right? So much so that people would take them as a nature for them, because they become so used to it, so used to these habits that they take it to be part of their nature. So if by repetition and practice you learn to be courageous, the courage will become habitual in you. And what does it mean to be habitual? It means that, guys, you don't need to think about it to do it. Just like the Nike ad, you just do it. You don't, without, you just do it. Just like driving, guys, again, and guys, when you drive now your car, think about it. You practically don't think it over. You just do it. Yeah. In fact, if you start thinking about your driving, this is a sign of trouble, right? Means that there's something wrong. Yeah. And morality, moral virtues should be like that. Moral virtues should be virtues. Moral virtues, I should say, moral virtues should become habits that you are so used to doing it without thinking, right? Of course, in the initial installation, in the download, reason is essential. But once the download is to use a computer analogy, once the download is complete, hopefully you don't need to think about it anymore. You just do it. And I think this is an interesting point of virtues being habits in the human mind. Let me see. Let me take your opinions. See if you have questions. Do you like Aristotle's theory? Agree? Disagree? You all see how it's a theory that links good life to the nature of persons. To know what the good life is, we need to think about the person as a whole, the totality of the person, and the kind of traits that the person possess or have or display, right? So Ted Bundy, I go to Anha, Ted Bundy, or give me a, or Gyges. Remember, guys, the Gyges who killed the king and became using the magical power ring. They're bad because they displayed or exhibited vicious qualities. They're not truly virtuous or happy for that matter. Our next read, guys, next time we move on
Doctor,
to Philip. Yeah, please go ahead.
sorry for interrupting. Although Aristotle's idea is, or concept or theory, it's reasonable and rational, it's a bit utopic, you know,
Yeah,
يعني
it's optimistic, definitely.
exactly. It's pure, like very optimistic because
Mm,
nowadays you cannot see this pure application of or implementation of the
yeah,
virtue, the concept of virtue.
that's yes, that's why ideally you cannot separate individual virtue social virtue. It takes a virtuous society to have a
Exactly.
virtuous individuals. So ideally, this is also a theory in politics, and you cannot separate politics from virtue. Aristotle was, of course, also a political philosopher.
Yeah,
So,
true.
so technically, you need really virtuous society, a society that encourages virtue collectively and individually.
Doctor?
Guys, yeah, thank you. I'm thinking of day of the midterm. How about 6th July? Is it too late? Hang on, 6th July. Is it too late? What do you think? 6th July mid. I don't think it's too late given the drop on. How about 6th July, guys? Class time. Class time. 6th July. Okay, I will send an email, a reminder. 6th July. That would be a Tuesday, right? Tuesday. All right, guys. So read for next time. Read for next time, guys. Utilitarianism. And before you leave, please write your attendance names. I created a poll. Yeah, there's just one, guys. One midterm. Just one midterm. Hadi, right? It will not be an MCQ. I'll talk about the midterm, Jean-Marc, next time, maybe. Okay? All right, Jean-Marc, remind me. Because MCQ is a hustle with WebEx. It's just really a hustle. All right, thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doctor.
Bye-bye, guys. Yes, so midterm and a project and a presentation. Hopefully, we'll have time to do that. A group presentation of a project. Bye, guys. Thank you, Rebecca. Bye-bye.